welcome everybody. My name's Tim Cerny. I'm the CEO here at SafetyNet, and excited to have you with us for the third segment of our artificial intelligence webinar. We have this is currently the final one of our artificial intelligence, and this one is focused on Microsoft Copilot's Excel, and we're going to take a deeper dive into Excel. And with me, of course, is our subject matter expert in artificial intelligence, our account executive here at SafetyNet, Greg Herron, and Greg's going to give you an overview and some insight into how to leverage artificial intelligence and Copilot more effectively in Excel. And I'm pretty excited about this, Greg, because I kind of see myself as an average Excel user, and I'm hoping that this information will give me the ability to elevate my game and capability with the application itself. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. As Tim mentioned, this morning, we're going to be talking about Copilot for Excel. At the presentation I made at NMC several weeks ago, I mentioned that Copilot comes in different flavors. This is Copilot for Office 365, which covers, we've been doing the series on Word and Outlook, and today Excel. But there's also Copilot for Finance. If you see that, that's if you have the Microsoft Dynamics product. So I've gotten questions about what's finance. It's for Dynamics. But everybody today is taking data out of their financial system, even if it's as simple as QuickBooks, and they're dumping it into Excel. So this morning, I'm going to focus on Excel. And you'll see I have a spreadsheet here. Probably looks like a lot of your spreadsheets that you have, right? Columns and rows and data. Here's a data called sales performance. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've opened up my spreadsheet. The one thing that I do want to highlight here is that you need to have your data in a column and a row format. So that's typically how we do it, but just to highlight that. The other thing to make note of is to have Copilot. I've gotten that question before. You have to purchase the Copilot for Office 365 and then enable it for the user. When that happens, in Excel, you'll see up here, there's a Copilot button. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. And it's opening up a Copilot window. And it is giving me 4 basic categories: create, edit, edit for highlight, edit for sort and filter, and analyze. And I'll go a little bit more into that. But one of the things I want to draw your attention to is, unlike in some of the other Copilot applications, it says preview in parentheses. What does that mean? It means that Copilot is still being developed by Microsoft. So there's changes constantly coming out. In fact, when I was preparing for this morning's webinar, I noticed some slight changes. So anyway, we're going to go ahead. And as Tim mentioned, one of the things that we struggle with sometimes is, how do I write a formula? Okay. So let's say in my spreadsheet here, I want to know the profit margin for each one of these rows. So I'm going to make sure I've clicked into the data. I'm going to say add a column for profit margin. So what's happening now is Copilot is taking a look at the headings that I have on top. So it's very important that I have good labels at the top of my data. So what does that mean? If I pulled the data directly out of my accounting software, it might not have good user-friendly names. It could have field names that say GL101_B or something. So you might have to change those. So here it's generated it for me. and it says, hey, I looked at this data range. Notice how it picked it up from A1 and all the way down to my last row is 151 to P151. And it says, I'm going to compute the profit margin for the product. And it goes through and it tells how it's doing it. The other thing it does is it gives you a heads up to actually what the formula is. So I take a look at that and I say, that's what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the column. Notice
Greg,
how
I think that
quickly.
I think that what I love about that is, I mean, that's a fairly straightforward formula. Even this, basic Excel user can handle that one. But I'd imagine that, by being able to speak in kind of English or in general conversational tone to Copilot, you could have it generate many more complex type formulas without really even having a deep understanding of how to develop that formula yourself.
Oh, correct. And that's and sometimes what happens is you'll ask a question and Copilot will come back with, I'm unable to do that. And it might provide a suggestion on how to ask it. So I'm going to add another column here. And I'm going to ask it for revenue because I don't have the revenue. What I do have, right, is I have what my current price is. I have what the recommended price is, right? And I have how many was sold, but I don't have the dollar amount. So let's see if Copilot is smart enough to figure out what I need it to do. So again, it's looking through the data, and notice now it automatically expanded it to include Q. And sure enough, Copilot came in, said, oh, D2, which is my current price, times P2, quantity sold. And so I'm going to go ahead and insert the column. Notice when I hover over insert the column, you get a preview of what it looks like before I insert it. The other thing that I thought was really an interesting fact with it, and I did not highlight this when I did the profit margin, is notice how it automatically formatted it to a percentage and this to a dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, Tim, when you insert a column, you have to go back and say, okay,
Yeah.
I need 2 decimal places and stuff. So it automatically does that for you.
Well,
Now
we're
that,
looking at a lot of financial data here, Greg. I think
mhm.
you mentioned it at the beginning, but I think it's worth noting that, Copilot cannot and is not, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is not set up to go into your financial system and pull this information out. It requires that right now that you download a file to Excel from your financial system to have it act and manipulate your spreadsheets like as you wish. Is that correct?
That is correct. Unless like what I mentioned at the start of it is if you have the Microsoft Dynamics product, they've built the connector, but you
Okay.
have to buy an additional product, not just Copilot for Office 365, but you have
Okay.
to buy it for finance. They also have a connector for sales. I expect other software companies will be developing that connector, but you're
Got
right.
it.
Today you have to do the extraction yourself.
Thank you.
The other thing, like Tim mentioned, is sometimes when I'm taking a look at my data, I want to do some color coding stuff. So let's say that I want to know wherever my profit margin is negative. So I say highlight in red all negative profit margin. I could have also said less than 0, but right, I think of it as negative, so I'm just going to put in negative. So it went through and it highlighted all the negatives in red. I'm going to do one more similar highlighting.
While you're doing that, Greg, I would say to the audience, if there's some questions, feel free to put some, there's a Q&A button at the top of the screen. It's a great place to add some questions that we might be able to respond to either immediately or later in the presentation.
Thank you, Tim. So now I want to highlight in green all profit margin greater than 35. So it says, okay, I'm going to query the data. I'm going to highlight in green everything greater than 35. Oh, look what happened. It says, I apologize. I can only apply formatting to column names. Sometimes it does that. So what I found that I have to do, if you notice up here, I said highlighted all profit margin greater than 35. I'm going to re-put it in, but notice how I put brackets around profit margin because that's actually the field name up here. There's a space. I notice that sometimes Copilot doesn't recognize it. So I find if you put the field names in brackets that it most of the time will work. So let's try it again. I did that intentionally so you can see that not everything comes out 100% when you ask it. A lot of this comes from experience in working with it. So notice how it did it for me. And notice how I didn't have to say greater than 35%. It knew that it was a percent column. And so it highlighted it for me. Well, one of the things that I want to show you is what Tim said earlier is I'm just typing in the commands in English. But as anybody who's a pro at Excel knows, that I could have gone into conditional formatting. And put that in. But I didn't have to remember where do I put the conditional formatting and put all that in. It did it for me. So it kind of turns us all, it kind of, to your point,
levels the playing field a little bit, right?
Yep. You can ask questions.
You can look smarter than you are with Excel. I love it.
Yep. Because I know when I first started working with conditional formatting, I seemed to struggle with it in my early days. But so you say, well, gee, I can do that. Yeah, you can, but now you've elevated your average user.
Yeah. Great.
The other thing I can begin to do too, like I said at the start this morning, is I can inquire against the data. So now I have my data. I've done my highlighting, but maybe I have questions like, how many product categories are there? Because I want to know how many product categories are there. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, how many product categories do I have? Now, the average Excel user, right? That's the question that they have. You know, I'm looking at it, how many of this grouping do I have? So it's taking a look at my data. Well, like I showed you before, it's telling me, oh, there's 5 of them.
Greg, there was a request for you to, are you able to zoom in on your screen just a little bit so that they can see?
Sure.
I don't know how that impacts the, that's helpful. Thank you.
So unfortunately, I can't get this side of the screen to go much bigger.
Okay. Okay.
But you'll see here, it did a distinct count. So for those of you familiar with Excel, you'd say, well, gee, I could have wrote that. But what's really cool is I can now add it to this spreadsheet. It puts it on a new spreadsheet. All it did was a pivot table where it counted it. But I didn't, you know, if I don't know that's how I can get that answer, that's a way to do it. The other thing, I'm going to go ahead up to data here, turn filtering on. And if I look, there is indeed 5 categories. So that's another way I could have done it, but just an example of it can do it for me. Maybe I'm a sales manager, and one of the questions that I have is, well, which product category brought me the most revenue? So I'm going to come back over to here. I'm going to ask a question like that. Which product category had the most revenue?
I'm not sure that as it's thinking here, Greg, I'm not sure if you're going to be getting into this, but you know, I always like to see this data put into presentation form, you know, bar charts, line charts.
Mhm.
I would expect that you could ask it to accomplish those tasks as well. Pretty straightforward.
Correct. It's like I queued you up for it. That was the next
Okay.
thing I was going into.
Okay.
So it says I analyzed it, and here's what I found. The top product category is road. It's $10 million. So again, it's going to add it to a new sheet. So you see I have sheet 1 down here. So now when I add, it puts it into sheet 2.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I want to just mention is it's just a pivot table that it created, right? So I can come up here and I can see what it did. So it said I want the top 1, but maybe I want the top 2. So I can modify the table. The one thing I want to also mention is think about it, because it's putting these pivot tables, and now you'll see a pivot chart pretty soon, on a different tab. All you would need to do is refresh your data on this tab, and then your corresponding tabs would get refreshed. So you don't have to build this every time. So I just want to highlight that. So one of the other questions is Tim asked is, well, I like charts. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, hey, make a bar chart showing revenue by product category. So again, it's going to query my data. It's going to find the product category. It's going to find the revenue column. So over here, again, it says I analyzed your data. It gives you the range that it analyzed, showing you the bar chart. And it says I'm showing you the bar chart by category has been created. So I can go, I like that. I want to keep it. So here it generated the pivot table so that the pivot chart could be built on it.
That's great.
So again, I could come into here. I could change the fields that I wanted to do. I'm not going to take a lot of time with it, but I could change the colors if I didn't like the colors that it came up with.
Okay.
You could query it and tell it to change the colors, but they haven't gotten that sophisticated. I was playing with that the other day and it just says, sorry, I can't change the colors, but it told me how to go in and change the colors.
That's great.
The other maybe question I have is, which models have the most quantity on hand? Because I want to run a sale. So the point I'm making here is just think of any question you might ask of your data, and it will decide if it's a pivot table, a pivot chart, a formula. I could have easily asked what the average selling price was, to your point, Tim, and it would have done the formula for that as well.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and just add that to a new sheet. You'll see down here in sheet 4, it did it, and it took all my models and summed it up for me. Coming back to here, you'll see that there's more prompts down here. So I can hit here and I can say, I want to edit, I want to ask questions. So it brings up more prompts that you can ask. So if I want to edit, I can, so here's some sample questions. That's what my point was with here, is that so I can do that. I
Okay.
can also sort the data. I didn't bring that up, but I could say I want to sort the data, and I could say sort it from minimum price to maximum price. And so that's a way to query it. So um, again, just to stress that Copilot, it's you and Excel working together. So the answer is not final. It's up to you to check the answers and to verify it. The other thing I wanted to mention is if I click on the prompt and say more prompts, it actually takes me out to, you'll see where I have it on the back on the presentation slide, but it shows you sample questions. So Microsoft has helped you come up with sample questions.
That's good.
So I'd like to switch back to being able to take some questions, Tim.
Well, let me just start with this question, Greg. We mentioned this at our in-person seminar, the importance of getting your business in a position to leverage AI, because there are some risks associated with it. And I think of Excel being, one that presents some risk. If I was to download some financial information, maybe it's my balance sheet or my P&L, and manipulating information there. Maybe it's some payroll information, and it's now out of my financial system, and it's in an Excel format, in OneDrive, in SharePoint. If that isn't, if permissions aren't set up properly within my organization, there's some risk associated with that, isn't there, Greg?
Oh, there definitely is risk associated with that. You probably don't see the risk so much in this Excel example because I opened just that Excel file. But where the risk comes into play is if I'm using Copilot overall in the tenant and I ask an innocent question, if this Excel spreadsheet is not secured, it would come up and provide feedback. But that brings up a good point that I want to stress. When the Excel file that I was working with was on OneDrive. So in order for Copilot to work, the file must be saved initially to either OneDrive or SharePoint. So to your point, Tim, you want to save it to a secured location.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Doesn't appear that we've got any questions coming in on the Q&A. I'll just take a minute to to share one last thing too. If questions do come in, we'll jump on them after this message here. But that is that understanding the importance of preparing your business for it. Our team at SafetyNet has developed a Copilot readiness project. We've got two versions of that project, one to really help prepare individuals or executives to be able to leverage the tool and leverage it safely, and then another to prepare your entire business. If you were to get all of your employees, eventually we will, right? Well, eventually Copilot will be utilized just like we're using Teams today. It'll just be sort of synonymous with the the Office 365 ecosystem, and we'll need to have our entire kind of environment secured in a way. So we've got some projects available. If you're interested, let us know. We can help you with those things.
Oh, definitely, and security is going to become more and more important as they release more features to the Copilot toolset.
Great.
Up on the screen here, I have that link to the Excel prompts. So it's like in the other seminars.
Need more cowbell? No. Need more Copilot. Okay, that's good, Greg. Thank you. Well, anything else here before we wrap up, Greg, that you'd like to share?
I just want to mention that Jenny has been so gracious to all these webinars have been recorded. So if you've missed a word or Outlook and want to go check those out, they're off of our website here, and I have the link for that. If you have any questions, reach out to your account manager here at SafetyNet. If you're not currently a customer of SafetyNet and have any questions about Copilot, you can also contact us at info@safetynet-inc.com.
And I couldn't miss the opportunity to share with everybody something that's kind of happening here at SafetyNet. We're doing something we've never done before, and that is a client referral campaign. Some of you may have seen some of the cringy videos I've been posting on LinkedIn about standing next to our Polaris RZR side by side, but we're giving away a side by side, $25,000 machine or $10,000 in cash for anyone that refers a client to SafetyNet between now and October 15th that we can sign on as a new client. Your name would be entered into a drawing to win that, and I'm guessing that the chances of your name being drawn will probably be 1 in 4 to 1 in 5. If we can sign 4 to 5 new clients on board, we'd be thrilled. And so the odds of you winning are significant. Many of you on this call know other businesses and business leaders and business IT leaders. Please consider referring those our way, and we'll get you sitting in that RZR right there, which I've ridden around our parking lot once or twice, and it's pretty amazing. So thank you so much for your time today, everybody. Thank you, Greg. Nice work. Appreciate you educating us on how to leverage this. And have a wonderful rest of your week, everybody. Take care.